Sure. I'm very excited about our next guest. He's coming today from British Columbia, and we have Martin Lampman with us. Martin's purpose has been elevating people's ability to achieve more through his encouragement, support, and guidance. He has been the customer care industry in the customer care industry for over 20 years in both the public and the private sector across many geographies. He is the Director of Customer Support Operations at BCLC, and he is a thought and industry leader on strategy, employee engagement, and operational efficiency. Martin, real pleasure to have you with us. We had a very heavy first session focused on technology, and in your session now, you're gonna have more of an expansive view on how we integrate technology in the way that we do work, in our culture. So we're very much looking forward to that. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and expertise with our global audience today.
Jose, thanks for having me here today. It's great to be here. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody that's out there. I'm so excited to be here to be able to talk to you a little bit about employee engagement and what it means to them and everything that they do. So I'm hoping you can see my slideshow all right. It's interesting. It's been a year and a half since we've been in this pandemic. Things have really changed. And I think as technology and everything has kind of advanced, so have we, and as individuals, we've advanced. And I think when you look back at the last year, I heard a great quote a while ago that said that in a year and a half, everybody actually has turned into millennials. Your grandmother, your grandfather, everyone has become a millennial because they've become so addicted to their phones and technology. But today, what I really wanted to talk about was just a journey that I've been on and that I've really taken a team on in a lot of organizations I've been with. As we've tried to move and advance as individuals, we're trying to stay connected to our people and see them grow as individuals as well. And before the pandemic started, interesting, I had done some sociological studies and did some research around what the impact was around workplace loneliness and isolation. And what we've been seeing is that 40% of the individuals prior to the pandemic were suffering from workplace isolation and really having a challenge trying to be connected with people. And what we were seeing also is that 60% of the workforce was really starting to have workplace loneliness that was impacting them. And this is prior to the pandemic. So people say, I can't wait to get out of the pandemic. I don't want to get out and go back to that. So it's interesting how workplaces have really driven and really had an impact, particularly around the millennials. And we see it higher in leaders and managers that they're not staying so connected and integrated with people on their teams. So I wanted to understand really what was going on with our team as we were venturing out on this work from home space and we were going as individuals. I really wanted to expand and look into what was going on. And I started to launch some surveying and some sharing sessions with my team and just understand and to level set how things were going. So I did a survey that really pulled into understanding from a collaboration aspect, were we very collaborative in our team because we were a customer support center? Was everybody sharing information? Through the survey, I found that 90% of my people believe that we were a highly collaborative team. We also found that 85% of our people were agreeing the fact that they had a friend at work and someone that they could talk to whenever they needed to. We also were finding that 80% of the people were staying connected and felt like they had a place that they could go to if they needed help or support. And we also found that over 90% of our people know who they can turn to for help and if they have a friend or relative that were close to them. Why I wanted to go a little bit further than just internally, because I really wanted to make sure that the people on the team also had branches of support outside of work, that they had a chance to go where they needed to. So what does that all mean? So in a lot of organizations, you get the results, you're like, yay, job done, let's move on. But really what I really wanted to do and what the team wanted to do is just really understand why. Why were we being so connected? Why were we doing so well as a team? And we hadn't been able to put our finger on it. We also needed to really seek to understand that why and know the steps that we wanted to take. We also knew that through the years that we have been growing, the 7 or 8 years that I have been in the organization, we had really changed the makeup and the lookup of our team because we wanted to get a lot more in tune with technology, but also the younger generation in the world that we worked and how was that working for them. So we saw the diversity of our team that was growing. We also saw through these last years, particularly in the last year, people are really starting to expect more from us. And we expect more from each other as we've been going through this pandemic. And I think we've been seeing it as well. Even then, we are expecting more from each other. And all of our needs have changed so quickly and we've had to adapt so fastly through this last year and a half and even prior, that we needed to make sure that we were doing the same in the way that we work with our people and the way that we were keeping them engaged. So how did we do this? How did we go down this journey? A lot of people talk about strategy and what strategy means. I'm sure everyone on this call understands what a strategy is. From an organizational perspective, you know, the leaders, the VPs, the C-suite, they develop these beautiful strategies. They're roughly 35 to 40 pages long, and people on the front line just don't read them. They don't have any insight to them. They don't understand them. They don't connect to them. And a lot of it is they just don't really understand what they mean, nor were they part of the process to create them. And with where I wanted to take the team is really on a journey to build them, make them feel part of a process while still staying aligned with the organization. So what we found through building of the strategy, that the buy-in of the team was so crucial as we went through this process, as they were part of it. They were able to give feedback and insight as we went along, as we went through it. Also technology, as you heard Jose say earlier, technology is such a behemoth for us, but it's the piece that underpins everything that we do, as well as the process. And how us as humans interact with that technology needed to be crucial as we talk through the strategy. And also, we needed to look at this strategy not as a numbers and a revenue and a financial piece of it, but also from a cultural standpoint. How does the culture impact with the strategy and make it work? Because a lot of people will focus on a strategy to be more business focused and leave the human element out of it, which is the key factor to make it happen. So what I have done with the team and we had built was what we called the strategy on the page, which is really taking a 45-page document and putting it into one page that really meant so much to them, but was also crucial in the areas that we wanted to focus on. So what we were able to do is we took the vision of the organization, which is always at the top of it, because we don't want to deviate from the vision of the organization, and created a strategy statement that we wanted to focus on and go towards. But we also underpinned the whole thing through KPIs that we thought were the key measures of success for us that really showed that our strategy was going to make something. Secondly, we wanted to really focus on what was the purpose of what we were trying to achieve and what was the purpose of why we were here, and get 4 quadrants into that area, and then look at the strategic initiatives and the areas of focus that we really wanted to focus on to drive this thing home. And then at the heart of what we did was really the values and the culture, and really drive what those pieces are, because they should be the heart of our strategy, because the heart of our organization and what we try to achieve and do every day. So we needed to go on a journey to understand what they were. Within the team and within the organization, we can always talk about, oh no, that team is so great, they have such a great culture. But when people say that, how do you know, and what does that actually mean to people? Also, when you're looking at it from an employee experience standpoint, what does that mean? People say I have a great experience working for you, but I have no idea. I just know that we're a bunch of great people and talk really nice to everyone, but that might not just be it. There must be something more and deeper to understand. So we wanted to go down this experience road and really understand from an experience standpoint what an employee was going through on that journey. And once we understood that and we spent the right time and the energy into the journey, we knew that it would pay us dividends in the end. So we built a journey map from the employee when the first day, prior to hiring, even through their recruiting process, the experience that they had, and followed them completely through that year and then beyond. Just to understand their ups and their downs, where they felt they were happy, where they felt they were sad through the process. And we did this from a leadership standpoint at first, just to challenge our myths and our beliefs as we went through it. So we built a journey map as leaders, and then we went out and did interviews with all the people that were 1 year and less, and then we did another subgroup of greater than 1 year. What we found out is that we were wrong in a lot of areas. We had thought that in starts of the process, we thought we were doing really well. But once we did the interviews and talked to people, we found that that was causing a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress through their journey. We also found that it was areas of opportunity for us to do a lot better. In areas we thought we weren't doing great, we were actually blowing it out of the water, which we did really well. Part of the solution, so then what we were able to do is take all that, build a plan to fix a lot of the pieces that were in there, and we made the employees that we did the interviews with part of helping to drive that solution and looking for areas of opportunity in there to drive even better experiences as they went through that. And then we're able to take that and then articulate that into statements that showed what type of experience people have when they work with us and work with the team. And a couple examples of what we have for what the experiences that they have. These are statements that they came up with that said that for one of them, we're committed to your growth. We're a talent incubator. It's a great place for you to come and grow and learn and be able to grow in the organization. And we're also a community of culture. And really build that within the team because we're supportive of each other. We're focused on wellness and the wellness of each other. So it was great to see those statements come out of the team as we went down and went through that journey. And today the team looks at that and says that's exactly the experience that you have when you're working with this team, which is fantastic. So culture. I talked a little bit about culture in the beginning. It's always been this myth that's out there, like, oh my God, the culture, and everybody believes that we should come in and try to change this culture. Knowing enough sites that I've been in and with enough teams, to change a culture is incredibly hard. And because a culture exists, it's there. So how do you make it and how do you nudge it into different areas that really start to show the great pieces of your culture, but also unearth some of those areas of opportunity that you have? I always love the quote from Frankl that said, our greatest freedom is our freedom to choose our attitude. And culture, a lot of it is based on the attitude that people have when they're in there and how people view each other. So we really wanted to unearth a lot of that and identify a lot of statements around what we believed our culture is and what it was made up of. We also didn't look internally because a lot of our exercises can be so internal focused that we forget what's happening in the outside world, but also we forget about how we're viewed as a culture and how other teams view us. In the world of perception and reality, we may have this reality feeling that we're a great team, but people's perception of us is completely different. And we want to make sure that those two planes equal the same as we go down this journey and understand what that looks like. And then from our culture standpoint, where we pulled all these interviews and went through all this research, we were able to identify a lot of the areas that we did really well in and that we excelled in. And the old rule is when you know that you're good at something, promote it. So we wanted to make sure that those things that we did well in, we were being well communicated across all of our teams, but also across the organization. We created videos, we created presentations that really focused on what we did well. And plus we talked about it a lot as we met with different parts of the organization and teams outside of it. And throughout this process, I talked a little bit about the survey in the beginning. We also continue to do surveys along the way so we can continue to do the health checks on how our culture is doing and how people are feeling through the process, and hold sessions with teams and hold focus groups. Harder in today's world, but actually a lot easier as you use things like fun retro boards, where you can bring people into groups. And it's amazing how people are more engaged, especially those that are shy and don't want to speak up, talk a lot more and speak up more when you're in this virtual world. So from our culture, a couple of the examples of what we were able to come up with that really kind of solidified what type of culture that we have and that the individuals that we have within the team. And we know that from the two that were the examples that you see there, engaged and genuine were top two in I think there was 4 statements that we came up with for our culture. Those were 2 of the top statements and 2 of the top pieces that came out of it. So finally, values. From the values journey is very interesting. Organizations have values. They always quote their 4 values that are very strong to them as an organization. But as an employee, just like when we're talking about strategy, when we're talking about culture, from an employee standpoint on the front line, for them to connect to those values is very difficult. They don't really understand them. And a lot of times they might not even know what their own values are. So how, if not knowing your own values, how do I connect to an organization's values? So we needed to take our team on a journey to help them understand, first off, what their values were, because they're core to everybody. They're core to who you are and what you do every day, and the decisions that you make. A lot of them happen within the values that you choose and where you want to go. So we really want to take time as individuals to understand what their values were and really get into it and have a conversation about what values meant for them, and then also highlight some of the areas as a group share of where all our values were. So from a team standpoint, what we want to do is take those values that we had as individuals and how do they represent us as a team? So not everybody's values are the same, but as a team, what do we believe our team values were? And how did those look as people from externally looked at us, but also internally as we looked at ourselves? Then we took the next step of our evolution and understood, so we know our individual values, they align to our team values, and we could have a conversation about that, but do they align to the organizational values? A lot of people don't really understand the connection of it. One of the values as an organization that we have is social responsibility, which is going to be changing in the future. But one of the ones we have is social responsibility. People trying to connect to social responsibility might not understand even what that means. Somebody who says, you know, one of my values is community. I go to the food bank on weekends. I help support my local community that way. When you have the conversation with her, like, well, that's social responsibility in essence, because what you're doing is reflecting the communities that you live in, but also the betterment of the area that you live. Then people, all of a sudden, the light bulb goes off and says, now I understand how my connection happens, where before they don't really understand. And when it comes to the core part of the values, we were able to then align them to show that your values actually align to the team values and really align to the overall organization. And as one, we're more in sync than what we think we are. Someone asked me once, well, what if my values don't align with the organization? And my response was, that's a very difficult decision for you to make. It's hard to work at a place that your values do not even align close to an organization, because that's an internal conversation to really have. And how do you work there? A couple of the ones that they come up with, I've shown there. Top two, again, connection and compassion were two of the top ones that came up with values. They also came up with great statements that actually supported their values. One of the team members, Steven is his name, he came up with a great statement that said, we are a family that is fearless, respectful, and diverse, which was just phenomenal. And then the compassion one as well. We care about our people and strive to be our best selves. They were just such fantastic statements, and when you sit down with the team and read them and go through them, it really hits close to home, and they feel really connected to what we're doing, what we're trying to do. So the journey to purpose, a lot of people, a lot of organizations now are making moves towards purpose, and it had its momentum a while back, and then it kind of faded a little bit. But through the last while, the year and a half, you've really started to see a lot of organizations talk about how their purpose has grown and what they're doing to help support different communities and different environmental or sociological things that are in the world today. And I think where we look at today is, as humans and as society, what we're starting to see is a lot of movements to make the world a better place. And that is really starting to impact our work, where we're doing, and what our people are doing. And I really wanted to start our team on that journey for purpose and what it is, and the reason that we want to do things. The interesting part is, as humans, we're crazy people. We're always trying to get something new, the new shiny gadget, the new piece, because we know that once we get that something new, we're going to be happy. And once we get that, do we find in the end that we're not all that happy, because we're trying to chase that next new thing. And when you look at purpose, as you heard in the intro that Jose did at the beginning, part of where it really strikes home is that when you lead with what your purpose is versus what your title is, then you know kind of what the essence of what you're trying to do, and really trying to drive forward. So what we really wanted to do is to try to find out what is that next step that we want to take. We know that our people expected more of us. We also know that the world is changing, and as society, we are changing, and we needed to adapt and change with it. We're also starting to see a lot more of the workforce. In a recent study, 42% of the workforce wants to work for an organization that makes a positive effect on the world. We're also seeing that from a millennial standpoint, because now I believe millennials are starting to outrank a lot more of the Gen X's in workforces, which is amazing. We're starting to see that group of people want to see and work for organizations that have a higher impact and a positive impact on places that they work in, communities. We're also finding, as you saw during the pandemic, people are starting to spend, 2 out of 3 consumers would spend more or spend the same amount of money to work for services or brands that have a positive impact, a positive social impact. So we're starting to see a lot of undergrowth happen. You all heard the statement of let's buy local, keep it local. So a lot of people started doing that, so it started to pull back. It didn't really hit Amazon too bad though. Their shares are doing quite fine, so let's not all be too concerned. But anyway, we're starting to see a lot more movements like that. And we talk about companies with purpose. A lot of companies have really started to make changes and try to move more towards that purpose standpoint. Starbucks, you've heard what there is. They're trying to make change and the image and help to nurture the human spirit. I think it's one cup and one community, one cup at a time. I think that's the way the statement goes. But they're really starting to make a positive impact in the places that they work, in the places that they have stores, and supporting the economies. Walgreens has done massive changes within their part of it. I think they were one of the first ones that stopped selling like alcohol and cigarettes. Cigarettes for sure, because they know that they're in the world of trying to provide better health for their customers. And why sell cigarettes if you're trying to make better health for your customers? Cariuma was one that I got on in the last year and a half, quite inspirational for the work that they do, for the type of product that they sell. They're really leaning towards greener technology. They sell shoes, but they've been able to change a lot of the fabric and what they use within shoes to be more friendly and more sustainable to the world. Shoes made out of bamboo fiber, cork insoles, a lot of their sole pieces as well. Instead of rubber, they're using a type of oil derived from plants. So they're making positive impacts, and for every shoe that you buy, they plant trees within the rainforest, and then they have different promotions for different things they're trying to make from an environmental standpoint. Jamie Oliver, who I just love, I mean, a lot of the pieces that he's done for just as a chef, but he's changed a lot more and focused towards kids and healthy eating within schools. I think he's trying to halve child obesity by 2030 within the UK, and he's done a lot towards sustainability when it comes to buying foods and meats that are sustainable and raised in a sustainable way, and also a lot of support for local artisans and what they're doing. So just phenomenal, the work that he's done in order to change, just from his perspective, and get people and influence them. Ikigob, I'm not sure how many people know this, but Ikigob is a lot around, it's a great book, but it's a great read around purpose and trying to find the way to live a long and happy life within the Japanese lifestyle. So there's some really great parts within Ikigob. Interesting side note, if you ever go to Amazon to look for books about purpose, you'll find over like 150,000 books around purpose. So everyone's got a book about it. But Ikigob it's great because it really focuses on 4 quadrants when you're talking about purpose. And 4, I'll get into it a little bit later when we're talking about it, but it's really focusing on what you love and what makes you happy. And within Ikigob, it talks a lot about the flow state, and what the flow state is really getting into that zone. I don't know if probably a lot of you have done it. You've gotten and you've done something that you've really enjoyed. So for me, it's like playing guitar, or when you're out fishing, or you're biking, or whatever it is. When you get into that flow state, it's just time passes and you don't even know the time that's gone by. You're so invested and you so much love what you're doing. You've really found what is truly true to you, but also part of what your purpose is, because you just love it so much, and become connected to it. So Ikigob really focuses a lot on that, and it's about what gets you up and gets you going in the morning and makes your day start, and really gets you excited to get going. In the Courage to be Happy, it talks a lot. When I was looking through it, the interesting part that I pulled out of A Courage to be Happy that really aligns well with purpose is people who want to make change always go towards, they call it the victim complex, or if things are not going well, it's always the poor me, it's always that bad person that did it to me. And there's always this dichotomy of, I try to do something more, but there's always so many forces and headwinds that are against me. And within the book, it talks about also what should you do now is the third point within the triangle. So it's fine that all this is happening, but at the end of the day, what are you going to do about it? And within purpose, that's the same piece. It's all these things are happening within the world. We could talk about, oh, society's going this way, or this is happening that way, but at the end of the day, what are we going to do about it? And how are we going to make the next change? And how are our people going to be motivated behind that to make that change, to make it happen? So I really wanted to start the team on the journey to find purpose. And again, you could read all the books you want. You could look at all the things that you can. I actually pulled this part from a session that Adam Letzig did in a TED Talk, because it's for teams. As an organization, we're moving towards more of a purposeful action. I work for an organization where over half of the revenues that we generate, because we're part of the government, over half of the revenues that we generate go to support communities, healthcare, schools, which is such a great organization to work for, to know that's where your revenues and dollars are going for. And we're trying to find better ways to connect the purpose of what we do and why we do it. So really, I want to get the team to connect, because like strategy, like values, they won't see that connection. They'll be like, I don't understand how that works. And really, it comes down to really understanding from a purpose standpoint, what is my purpose and what do I try to do? So in the Adam Lepzig piece, he talks about 5 things that you can really focus on and 5 questions you can ask yourself. The first one is, who are you? So really, what is your name and who are you? So the second part is, what do you do? So what is the best thing that you do today that you could get paid for tomorrow to continue to do? What could you show and teach someone else that they'll be able to learn from? The other part is, who do you do it for? So I might do, so I'm a leader within an organization and I support a lot of people. So who do I do it for? I do it for everyone else within the organization to make sure that they're living a happy life and doing the best to mentor and coach them along the way. The other part is, what do they need from or want from you? They want support, they want to be able to guide, they want to be able to learn through their journey. They also want to know where the next step is. In the customer support world, if you are in it, not a lot of people live their life dream to be a frontline rep. They want to make their next step into their journey, and they want to be able to advance their career. And that's what I'm here for, and that's what my leaders are here for. How do we take it and make that next step for you? And the last part is, how do they change from it? So if you're able to do all these pieces, how do they change in the end, and what makes it different for them? And really, the best part that I really like about Adam's view on this, and what really, when I went through with the team, what they really liked about it is that 5 of the questions, 2 of them are focused on you. The other 3 are focused on the outside, on someone else. So a purpose isn't truly focused on just what you are. It's more focused on what you do for others and how you take that next step. You heard Jose say it in the beginning, my purpose, and really I encourage, support, and guide others to elevate their ability to achieve more. I'm really focused on how I can make a positive change on people, not only from an organizational standpoint, but also from my family standpoint, and how do I do the best to help make and motivate my kids, and how do I work closely, or how do I support my brothers and my sisters and my uncles to make them a better life, and do the best I can for them along the way. And I think one of the big pieces, this is what my leader taught me years ago, was how do you take, that's your statement, but being able to have guiding principles along the way that really help kind of lead and put you in the direction that you are to help really reinforce your purpose is a key piece. And mine were eagerness and appreciation, because those are the 2 things. You can never go wrong with eagerness, and you can never go wrong with appreciation for what people do every day. An interesting part when it comes to purpose, one of the bookstores in the US, it escapes me right now, but when they hired people into their organization, they had, you were given your title, which is your work title, but they were also tasked with coming up with their purpose. And their second title was their purpose statement of what they wanted to be and what they were. So it really helped to drive home that whole fact around purpose and what they were trying to achieve. So in the end, you try to pull all these pieces together. Martin, you've gone over a lot. So what does all this mean to us? And I think when you put all the pieces together, it really starts to show the harmony with them all. We talked about experience and being able to journey map them. We talked about strategy and how core strategy was to the overall part of what you're trying to achieve. We also talked about culture and the influence of that, and the values that are kind of the core of what we're doing and how we're trying to do it. And I think when you get to the purpose part of it, which I ended on, it's really that atmosphere that circles around that really helps keep everything together and keeps everything in motion as you're continuing to try to go forward. So I guess a couple of the things I'd say in closing this off is from a strategic standpoint and strategy, make strategy an inclusive process. I talked a lot about how people come into it. We brought them in and make them part of the overall process as we go through. Every year we review it to make sure that we're staying on course. Every quarter I'll send updates of how we're progressing against that and how we're focused on the things that they want us to focus on and really shoot for. When it comes to culture, find out what your culture is. Really be open and honest and be vulnerable as you go through the culture process. Some people don't like to investigate with the cultures because they don't want to unearth the nasty stuff. Well, you need to unearth that to make sure you can fix it and move it into a direction that you want it to make it more positive for the other people that join your organization. From an experience, make experience matter. From the journey mapping was such a great process that we went through when we looked at experience to understand what our people went through, how they ventured, when they came in the organization, the adventure they went on, and how we can get them promoted out into the organization. We find that of all the people that we bring in, this last year, we brought in 40 people into our team. 36 of them were promoted into the organization into different roles, into finance, into IT, into a lot of our product teams. Were all promoted off, which is such a great piece for us. It's really tough when you got to train them all the time, but at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're helping to start an underground movement to making sure that from a player standpoint or a customer standpoint, we're building that underpinning part of understanding the customer impact on the business and the organization, and really helping to influence the organization and where it goes. Finally, or not finally, but another part is your values. Help people find theirs, and also find your own. If you haven't taken the time to identify what your values are, take the time to find them. It's not a very tough exercise. The exercise I led the team on took us roughly 20 minutes, and people can find their top 3 values in under 20 minutes if you can do the process quickly. And it really helps to show some light on what really motivates them and really where their directions go and how they go there. And I think finally, it's start a journey to purpose on purpose. Don't do it half, go all in. And what we're going to see is the world is going to continue on this change of where it's trying to go. Environmental, I mean, you've heard it in the G7 summits that are going on right now. Environmental impacts and social impacts are just massive right now. And it's hard as individuals, we get lost in the world. And I think that the more we spend time to identify what our purpose is and what we're trying to achieve, we can then take that and really help benefit society and do some better things for the world as we go forward. And that was it. And I did it in 31 minutes. I didn't think I'd make it.
Well, there was a quite a journey on purpose and culture. Terrific, Martin. We had several questions that have come up during the segment, and of course, we have gone from technology implementation to culture. So one of the questions is, how does culture and this discussion that you have had, such a meaningful discussion on purpose and culture alignment and values, how does that help or hinder your implementation of new technologies in the workplace? Because the reality is that these new technologies can be exciting for some, it can be downright scary for others. What are your thoughts about the role of culture, purpose in this fast-paced environment, especially when we talk about new technologies in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've found that from technology standpoint, absolutely it's been difficult when we implement some of them because the culture doesn't absorb them or rejects them quickly. Kind of like the other pieces I've talked about, the more we've made them part of the process, if that's an option, the more apt they are to accept it and bring that in. The other part is, in the world of change, is how do you get more people to be advocates of the change that you're making versus be dissatisfiers to the change. When making them part of the process, they're able to carry that excitement with them and be able to be champions for you in the organization and really help more people adapt to it, but also be there for, as I talked about in the beginning when we talked about the people and having a level of support for them, they're going to look to their peers more for support than sometimes they will their managers. Leaders and stuff, they might just grumble at them because they won't listen to me anyways. But if they have peers that they can go to and discuss this with, and be advocates for them, then let them have that spot and let them have that space to do it. And when it comes to space, people need space and time to really absorb everything. So give them that time and space, and it'll pay you dividends in the end.
That's great perspective, and I think one of the things that you mentioned also during your talk that on this area is how you talk about your strategy. I think you discussed the one-page strategy statement and simplify it. Is that your perception also that sometimes technology is kind of brought into the workplace, but it's not very well articulated how that technology fits into the strategy, how it's not really well communicated to those people in the organization, how it fits into the strategic picture. I don't want to lead you into that direction. I'm just curious, check for understanding here, that do you think that's an important aspect of it, or maybe not?
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand the why behind it. So we're going to go out and we're going to launch this new piece of technology, whether it's a new phone system or whether it's a new CRM, and people are like, well, I don't understand. What I have is working fine for me. But they don't understand the connection and what it's going to mean for them in the end, but also what it means for everyone else. And from a strategy standpoint, what you're trying to do is help your team connect the dots, because otherwise they don't understand what's going on. And when I talked about within the strategy, the strategic initiatives that you're focused on, part of that is the technology improvements. And when you're communicating that well of what that initiative means and where you're going with it, then people will jump right in and be more of a supporter of it than a dissatisfier of it. Once they understand the why, and I think that's really gets down to the heart of it, Jose, is just getting into that why we're making the change, and give them space to have the conversation about why they don't like it or what does it mean. So.
Excellent. William Fuller, coming from boring Oregon today. There's nothing boring about that city, by the way. I just love the name. I
Beautiful.
have to say it.
It's a beautiful place.
So William's a great contributor to all of our discussions here for many months already, and the tremendous experience in the industry. And his question is related to understanding employee values and organizational values. They should optimally be aligned. But his question is that what do you do when the organization does not act in accordance with its stated values? When there is that misalignment of the stated values and the actual behaviors that you see in the organization. What is your perspective as you're trying to build the culture when you come across, issues like that?
I'll give you a couple examples. It's a great question, by the way. So I'll give you the first example. One of them is my daughter's soccer team, which is not part of work, but my daughter's soccer team that she's part of, one of their values is inclusive. And a lot of the steps that they do as teams, because they have the main team and they have a reserve team on their soccer, or as Jose would say, your football team. But when they do things, they're doing it more for the people that are part of the core and not so much for their reserve team. And when they're doing special things like that, it's not very inclusive of an environment. And so what that led to was a conversation with myself and their board to talk about, they state these values, but here are examples of where they're not being represented in a way. And I think people just believe that they're happening, but they don't actually take the time to step back and see, are they actually happening? And sometimes it takes someone like me or another individual to bring them to light to have the conversation. And I transpose that into the organizational world. In organizations, sometimes they believe that they're representing them when really the evidence shows that they're not. It's that whole plane of perception and reality. My perception is that my values are being lived as an organization, but in reality they're not, and they're running on two separate planes. And you need to bring the leadership to what reality is, not just what they're stepping back, what their perception is of what's going on, and really have the conversation around it.
Yeah, very well. Next question comes from Suresh Kamesh Vinjamuri. He's in India today, and Suresh is asking, is mentioning that many organizations, they do a great job in onboarding people and talking about culture, and not such a great job in talking about culture and living those values when they're letting people go. And what is the importance of keeping your culture and values during good times and during bad times? If you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So culture and values during the good times, it really helps to unite a force, and it actually happens on both sides of it. In the good times, it really shows, and it really helps to, what I've seen is really sparks innovation and really sparks people to branch out and want to do more in the good times. And they're really apt to jump in and be supportive of each other because they have the flex and the space to do so. What we saw in this last year is we saw some real hard times. I mean, we saw hard times in the world for people that weren't working. We saw hard times in the organization because what you were doing, you were getting twice the amount of volume and twice the amount of stress piled on top of you that you were having to do. Plus your whole world changed because you're working at home when you used to be working in an office. Where that really started to come true in the bad time, in that tough time, was that when I talked about the connection, the compassion, the team really stepped up and used those as their anchors to stay more connected to each other. We also used it in a lot of the communication that we have with people, with our teams and with individuals, to really say, There's a great group of people here willing to support you at any time. I echoed our compassion and all our stuff all the time as we were going through. And I think during the hard times, even more so, do you have to communicate what has made you great and what will continue to make you even better as you go down this road. People will lose sight of it, and the more you take to bring them back in and anchor them back to the core of what you are, then there's less chance that they'll stray down other paths and start to build that underlying and that undergrowth of horror or despair, I guess you could call it. You're just doing your best to keep people anchored to what makes you successful, and has really been the core of who you are.
For sure, for sure. And how do you increase courage in organizations, Martin? Because a number of the themes and questions that have emerged from the audience here has to do with the fact that people don't speak up. They're quiet, and there is about things that may bother them, and there's good, bad on that. So it's very contextual for sure. But the question is, how do you increase courage in organizations? This is an item that comes often when you're managing change and implementing change, and on both sides, not just to say that we need to create this inclusive environment, but also how do people find the courage to speak up? How do you see that blend of the two sides?
That's a very interesting question. Whenever it says courage, I always go back to the Wizard of Oz. But I think when we're talking about courage, here's one of the main parts that comes to having the courage is the fear. And there's this fear behind us that I don't want to speak up because I don't want to be made fun of. I don't want to. I have this fear or this courage to go do something, because when I do something and it fails, people will view it completely in a wrong way, and not make it a proper environment for me. And probably I'll be, I think they called it red circled for the rest of my life because of something I did. And what I've really worked with the team about, and what we're really seeing a lot of success is, one, giving people the space to try new things and attempt new things. Whether they're small process changes, or even I had one girl on my team launched a new technical piece with our CRM, which was a huge undertaking for her to take, but she was a champion of it, and it was the first time she'd gone through something like that. And I think through the journey that you let people do and giving them the space to do that, it's a great opportunity to help people learn. And I think where people will get more and more courage is if they get a chance to try things, build up that kind of rigor for them, but also that backbone, so to speak, that they're willing to take the next step, to take a risk again. And when they have the free space to do it, and that you're there and supportive of them, they're willing to do it. And they're willing to speak up about it, and talk it through. And I think where you have people who go through and take on challenges and then fail, have them talk about it. Have them talk about the experience that they had, and talk about not just with you, but with a larger group, and communicate that. And it's not a bad thing to have. And I think the more that you talk about it, the more it becomes the normal for people, and it becomes part of the learning process that everyone's going through. I always I bugged one individual on my team because when they went and launched something, it didn't go well. And I said, I was so happy for you. And they were like, you're just a demented person. I'm like, no, I really am. I truly am happy that you went through a process and failed through it, because I want you to experience what that's like. And when you have that happen, you can talk about it, and you can share that with other people, and you also learn from it. You can't learn if everything you do goes perfectly, because everything then in your mind is planned to go an exact way. And the minute that it fails, then you don't know what to do. And failure teaches you ways to overcome things, and it teaches you adversity, and it teaches you ways to be resilient when the tough times happen and change happens.
Excellent. Martin, one final question here for a wrap up. In this journey of some organizations are going through right now with digital transformation, I often say that there is a majority of digital transformations, by the way, fail miserably, and different numbers, 70%, 80%, 90% plus. And of course, if you've been around for a while and you pay attention, you realize that there's no such thing as digital transformation without business transformation, and there's no such thing as business transformation without cultural transformation. So if you're going to transform something, you need to understand what those new behaviors will look like and how you're going to role model and play and really behave accordingly. So the question is for organizations and professionals in this journey of digital business and cultural transformation, what is the biggest advice you'd have for them on that journey, that they have to get this right, or at least keep this in mind?
Oh, so I think some more of my advice comes from those is number one is trust your people. Your people will do amazing things for you if you give them the time to do it, and you give them that space to learn about it, and trust that they're doing things in the best interest of everyone. I truly believe in my heart that people aren't like truly malicious and want to hurt things and do the wrong thing, that they really want to truly do the right thing, because success is everybody's game. And I think the more that you take the time to trust them and give them the space to do it, they're going to surprise you and amaze you. And even those that you haven't, again, on my plane of perception and reality, even those that you may perceive to be not the right people, or might be of people that you don't relate well with, one day they are going to amaze you. Sometimes it takes a long time, but one day they will, and you'll go, that's why you're here. And so give them the trust that they're going to do it. And the other part is give them the space to go on the journey with you. Once you have the time, the trust, and the space that they can learn and they can evolve, again, they'll just be such strong advocates for you. It will grow a culture of acceptance. It'll grow a culture of learning, and you'll have more of a team getting to the end than just yourself. I always said that the best team is the one that carries you to the finish line. It's not the one that you have to put on your back and pull kicking and screaming all the way.
Yeah. Martin, thank you so much. Great wisdom, great insights. On behalf of our global audience, thank you for taking the time and sharing your expertise from British Columbia to the world. We very much appreciate that.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Martin Lampman, Director of Customer Support Operations at BCLC, sharing his insights on digital business and cultural transformation, a journey that we are all being part of, willingly or unwillingly, these days. So wonderful insights, so appreciate that. We are going to be taking a pause now and starting back up at the top of the hour. And at the top of the hour, I'm going to bring you a global expert who is an advisor for several technology companies on RPA, on intelligent automation matters, and he always brings tremendous color for our conversations, for his presentation on the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to digital transformations, when it comes to exponential technology development and implementation. So I will see you with Mark McGregor at the top of the hour. Thank you.